SlikouOnLife, in conjunction with the Hennessy brand, recently did a video profiling and I suppose having a discussion about the 50th birthday of hip hop and shifting the 40th, excuse me.
No, 50th. 50th
on 50th in general,
and then
40 in South Africa.
Yeah.
So it was an interesting conversation that held a lot of points that had the internet talking, chiefly Stogie T's comments about there not being a classic that can be certified in South African rap. So it is only right that the headspace goes into the nitty-gritties of the video as we see it, as we understand it, and kind of pick apart at some of the errors, but also give credence to a lot of the insights that were shared in that conversation. So I want to start off by saying, for me, the gleaming annoyance that keeps creeping up whenever talking heads whose profile is famously regarded in the game speak on matters of hip-hop is this conflation of hip-hop as rap.
I mean, for me, I feel like I was introduced to hip-hop like before I even went to primary school. I was still in kindergarten, so it has definitely influenced the way I dress, influenced the way I speak, you know, and influenced the way I carry myself, because the music I was listening to at that time, I wouldn't really say I understood it, but it made me feel a certain type of way. And when I saw it on television, that's what I wanted to be. So literally, hip-hop has changed my life, man. Because who knows how I would have dressed or spoke if I hadn't, you know, bumped into it.
I want to start off by saying that conversation had nothing to do with hip-hop. There. It was a conversation about rap music in particular, and the influence of rap music in street culture, in terms of the fashion, and thus the branding, all wrapped around the foundation of capitalist intent. Nothing wrong with that. Beautiful conversation when you frame it right. So I think my first issue with that is that they were not talking about the culture of hip-hop, they were talking about the impact of rap. And for a conversation that claims to be about hip-hop to not address the culture at large with all of its elements, how it's developed in this country in particular, do we or do we not acknowledge, support and sustain the livelihood of graph writers, of breakers, of DJs? Because we have so much of a hyper emphasis on rap that moments like these, I feel, should be more emphasized on the neglected aspects of the body of the hip-hop culture. We hardly have conversations about graph and how it's evolved. We hardly have conversations about DJing and the standards and the different elements and the different ways that DJing has changed over the years. We do not have conversations about hip-hop. We have conversations about rap, because capitalism has convinced us that it's one and the same. But it's not. You can have hip-hop without rap. Matter of fact, when hip-hop began, the rapper did not come to the forefront if it wasn't for the pivotal union of the DJ, who sets up the centerpiece of the block party, thereby bringing the elements together. We've said this in countless videos. We'll probably put the links in the description, because my goodness, I really felt like I am, quite frankly, disappointed by people whose work ethic and whose cultural impact I respect. From Scoop Makatini as an icon that constantly pushes the boundaries of the aesthetic of streetwear, even Tumi Mulekane, as famously as I criticized Stogie T, because I feel a lot of people love him because of the colonial prism of English and the politics of language in hip-hop, and how he kind of represents the rapper according to what we think a rapper should be like. Great English, sophisticated tongue, but doesn't have any bearings on our own locality. Those are my Tumi critiques. As an individual, I would not be caught dead pretending like he did not have an impact within the rap culture in South Africa at large, in ways that influenced how we understand poetry, social commentary, and how an artist is allowed to grow. But nonetheless, these were people who are accomplished, but who really didn't know what the fuck they were talking about. And it's really disappointing, especially coming from people who practice the art form of rap and who are close enough to the art form to understand how these words and these definitions are used. And I think there is an unknowing sense that this synonymizing of hip-hop as rap and terms like hip-hop music are an anti-hip-hop narrative. They are trying to erase hip-hop. When you call hip-hop a kind of music, when you call it a genre, when you think it is a look, you are erasing what the culture really is. When you passively allow yourself to run with the definition that was, quite frankly, created by white folks to cash in on one particular aspect of the culture by labeling it as the culture at large. Are we not still ruining what hip-hop truly is by now becoming a part of this capitalist party to erase the origins and subsequently the actual culture of hip-hop? So that's the first and foremost thing that I really want to address. Hip-hop is not streetwear. There are elements of streetwear that emerge from how people in the culture dressed, but to say things like, you know, a bucket hat is hip-hop, certain sneakers.
Sneakers are hip-hop.
You know, hip-hop helped me dress a certain kind. It's to limit the capacity of what hip-hop is. Now, if you know me, you know that I do not emphasize on what something isn't without clarifying what it is. So if hip-hop isn't the clothes, if hip-hop isn't just rapping, just DJing, what is it? We can't float on some kind of nebulous place where we're not clear about the things that we say. Because it's so important, especially in these days and times where the medium of social networks allows us to interact and talk about things and pass each other's comments off as if they are carrying a certain level of knowledge. When the truth is, most people haven't done the actual work of really studying, really going back to understand what hip-hop is. Now, hip-hop is the practice, and I emphasize this. It's a doing. It is the practice of breakbeat. Now, when I say the practice of breakbeat, yes, I am talking formally about the technique that DJs used to loop open portals of an instrumental, repeat it, thereby cycling and recreating what the song could be, which created the room for the crowd mover to come in there, chant, and enhance the value of the party while the breakers move their body in ways that were transcending what dance and movement could be, as the graph writer is creating the visual feel of this culture in motion. Breakbeat is not only the DJ in motion and his technique, but it's the dancing. It broke the beat of dance before it. The rapping broke the beat of MCing or poetry before it. All of the elements of hip-hop have this one common theme: break beat. And break beat means to break the formula, to break the pattern, meaning to recreate, to reinvent, to repurpose what was there in new and exciting ways. So now, if we use that as the definition of hip-hop proper, formally, in its cultural organizing, then we see that it was only the element of rap which was taken, put into the face of the industry as some kind of musical genre. And as a result, rap progresses at the expense, and yes, at the very erasure of the rest of the body parts of hip-hop. So, breakbeat. And previously I've said that in this breakbeat, the ethos was always a level of self-empowerment. Rap was born out of the need to use what you had. Graph was born out of the need to use what you had. Be it the talent, the skill, the creativity, the actual resources of the speakers. They didn't have a lot, and they used what they had to create a new scene, a vibrant movement, and a way in which people could celebrate the aspects of the life that they lived, as hard as it was. So now, to have brands like Hennessy put famous rappers in their bill and pass that off as the messaging of hip-hop, associating it with luxury, associating it with all of these aspirational qualities, takes away from the breakbeat. It takes away from the fact that at its core, rap and all of these other elements that make up hip-hop are about transcending the formula of what is done. So in this creative mold, can we look and we say that the people who were having this conversation were indeed really talking about breakbeat? Did they acknowledge creativity? Can we say that any of these people in this conversation were acknowledging breakbeat as an attitude, as a practice? How we as South Africans have taken what we had and been influenced by the culture of hip-hop to do it in our own way? I don't think they did. I think this primarily was a conversation that was celebrating the capitalist accomplishments of street culture. That's what it was about, and how elements that come from hip-hop have been able to become commodities and have been able to empower people. But it wasn't a conversation about the culture. It wasn't a conversation about where we are right now as South Africans with regards to the culture. Where our rap might be lacking, where it isn't, where our graph might be lacking, where it isn't, and so forth and so forth. Because if we're really going to have a reflection and a dialogue about where hip-hop has been and where it consequently could go in this country, we have to start by addressing what hip-hop is, and therefore ask ourselves, have we carried the tradition and built on it, or have we not? So going into that, taking the tradition and building on it is crucial, because I think that what it does is that it puts us in a place where we're able to see how hip-hop has influenced the culture of everything else, and how if we're going to talk about the influence of rap and the so-called golden era,
we're actually having this conversation, like when you talk about the golden era of SA hip hop, it depends how old you are.
Definitely.
Because there's some people who are like, if you talk to Rashid, it's like Lee Club. You know, it's like that era. And then if you like talk to a person like me, it's definitely that 2014 era. And then if you talk to another person coming up, it's Boys and Bucks, you know? If you talk to somebody else, it's Aries and Nasty C. If you talk to somebody else, it's Blackie. There's a kid right now who's coming up on SA hip hop, it's Blackie.
because that's the other thing. The golden era is not subjective. The term golden era is not subjective. A golden era is a time period whereby a thing is at the peak of its socio-economic impact. So that's what you call a golden era. The point in time where that thing was at its most effective to its audience.
You can't have your own.
You can't have your own golden age or golden era. I can't go, oh, the golden era of South African rap is 2000 to 2005, and somebody else goes, oh no, because you're older, I'm younger, my golden, no. The truth is, firstly, the golden era of South African hip-hop is also very different to the golden era of South African rap. Because you're measuring two different things. One says, when was the culture at large at its peak in terms of participation, mass participation, and mass address, and mass attendance, and mass engagement. And the other talks about those facets with regard to the art form of rap. So again, there was a lot of this confusion and conflation and things going from here to there without definitions being cleared out. And with people getting away with the idea that you could have your own subjective golden era, your own personal, private golden era. When the term golden era is a unification of observations that everybody sees about a time period where something was undoubtedly influential. And we can't have a golden era without looking at things historically through time as they grew. So, if you ask me, I think the golden era of South African rap music was definitely, and we've addressed this on numerous episodes, we've profiled why, the music that came out, its impact in that time, how it shifted the culture of their country at large. So if we're talking a golden era, an undoubtable golden era in South African rap, it has to be the era of about 2003 to 2005.
2006.
2006.
Yes.
That is the SA rap golden era. Yo, what's up? It's me again. Lighting might be a bit different. That's what happens when you shoot in the townships. You gotta improvise because motherfuckers is playing loud music. Anyways, back to the conversation at hand. So, golden era can't have a subjective one. Therefore, it is hilarious to me that this round table is there trying to conspire with this idea that you can. And I think overall what I noticed from that episode is that people were trying real hard to not step on each other's toes. And they were trying real hard to not offend each other. They were talking around each other, and there were moments where you definitely felt that somebody wants to really vehemently poop on the other person's parade in terms of their idea. But maybe for the sake of an alleged professionalism, they felt they had to grin their teeth and suppress their feelings when ridiculous and outrageous points were being raised. So I think all in all, it just didn't allow itself to breathe and become a discussion that could go anywhere insightful. Because again, the confusion of hip-hop as rap, and again, this confusion of hip-hop being street culture, it just created a whole different conversation, which was interesting in and of itself, but again, it just had nothing to do with hip-hop. So, going to this trending point about a classic. Here at the Headspace, we have had what we've called the GOAT series, and in the GOAT series, we created a standard called the 5 principles. The 5 principles were conceptualized because we saw the need to filter in the views of various hip-hop heads by distilling what we felt were the key major points that thread together what unanimously everybody means when they speak on the nature of what greatness is. And it isn't a hard thing to do, because if you're able to identify what people are trying to get to, you're able to break it into a bare bones structure and reduce it to some kind of formula. It limits in many ways, but it helps the discussion get to a place where we can know what we're speaking on. So, to reiterate, the principles of greatness in an artist in particular, but they can also apply to a project, because the same goes. The artist is working on a body of work, and thus it becomes a testament at that moment to where they are. So, if you don't know what the 5 principles are, then you really would call me, because here at the Headspace, we've always heralded them from basically the inception of what we've been doing. So I'm not even going to mention them. I actually want Takezo to have them somewhere in the screen right here so that you can really know what we're talking about. Because at this point, Stogie T says a classic is unskippable. See, that's the first thing.
Got you.
I don't think we have a classic essay album. And
Whoa, wait. I just want to hear the people outside going, I
I don't think we have. I don't think we have.
That's crazy.
I think, you know, classic is unskippable. Classic is definitely relatability. What it did for you, like acceptance speech did for you, what what other albums did for people, but for me it's a very very high
Are you hard to
standard.
please?
No, it's just a high standard,
Are you hard to please? What makes a
the-
classic for you?
So, like I said, it's unskippable.
Mm-hmm.
It's timeless. It's absolutely timeless. Where, you can shoot a video for it today and
Right.
it still resonates.
Right.
I think what he was trying to get at was this nature of certain music being well curated as a body of work. Because it is not that you don't have songs that you skip when you listen to classic albums. It is that you are able to listen to the album as a cohesive, full journey without skipping on many occasions. But by far and large, you will have your favorite song. It's just the nature of how we listen to music. There are ebbs and flows. We don't like every song at the same pacing or same level. We're not drawn to each and every item that the artist presents in the same way, because the songs aren't designed to do the same thing all the time, most of the time. Therefore, if we're analyzing music, especially in the context of bodies of work, it is very important to see how all of these themes that the artist is trying to weave through come together. So the sentiment that he had was very much on the money, but the way that he expressed it makes it feel as if you can't have a classic album that you skip a couple of songs through, that's ridiculous. And I think what he was trying to get at, to take the risk of trying to speak on his behalf in this sense, because what I understand from people when they talk about unskippable is they're trying to express this idea that you don't have a lot of projects that you can listen to as according to their full track listing, and just allow that experience to take you where it may, and to walk away from that listening refreshed, enlightened, and obviously entertained and enthralled. So the other element besides classics being unskippable is he talks about, I'm looking at my notes because I don't want to forget it, the idea of timelessness. Again, very dangerous wording there, because let's get into the term classic. In its origin, it simply comes from distinguishing a certain division from others. So it's the same root as the word class. So you're separating one thing from similar things and you're distinguishing it in relation to its superiority. So when we're talking about classic, we are trying to take something holistic and turn it into something hierarchical, simply for the purposes of categorizing things competitively, which we do. So when we're talking classic, we're talking about something that has overwhelmingly become the top at its thing, at its style, at its genre. So a classic is a body of work whose impact resoundingly becomes resilient through its influence. In other words, a classic is a body of work that sparks imitation that leads to the consequent change of whatever culture that it contributed to. So when we're looking at music, how you measure a classic fundamentally is looking at how that body of work influenced the economy of what was around it. Artists who were active at the very same time, and as a result the culture of the audience at large. Because when we're talking music, not every musical contribution spreads itself so deep into people and impresses and inspires people to the level where they attempt to reproduce what it did in some quality. And that's what we mean when we talk classics. And by we, I mean like formal conceptualizing and understanding the term, because these words don't just float in a place where, yes, we engage with them, they mean something. They mean something very specific. And as it changes, it's very, very important to understand what these things mean, because we could end up in a situation similar to that episode, where it's just a sloppy discussion that's not anchored together by any unified understanding of what these concepts mean in order to identify what certain things aren't and what they are. We're back in the light again, folks. What's up? So, timelessness is not quite the way to word it. What it is influence. Because nothing is timeless. Everything can be dated. Everything can be identified according to the period that it was in. But there are certain things that, as dated as they are, you feel the resounding influence that they led to in your present moment. If we are listening to Levels, we feel the resounding influence of AKA's rapping style, his production, his use of techno music on certain artists that still resounds till this day. If we're talking whatever body of work, see, that's the thinking. Has this music produced something that still lingers at the core of what is active today and can be felt in the presence of artists that are active? Because that's how the music lives on. It lives on through the fact that it gives birth to inspirational homages and reproductions, and sometimes people who just flat out try to copy the same thing. I've addressed many a times in the review section how art and music can be separated into two types. There is art that is historical, so you have historicists, and there is art that is futuristic. You have people who want to maintain tradition, and then you have people who aspire to break it. And albums can be fit into that exact same category. And classics tend to be futuristic. They break the pattern. Again, it's the breakbeat attitude of what has been done. By imploring parts of the past in configurations in ways that haven't been done before. In other words, you create an interestingly new mixture from the familiar, which creates the new. So, I think nowadays, one of the reasons why we don't have a lot of classics is that we have a lot of historicist tendencies. Too many artists are simply content in reproducing what they're influenced by and not stretching the capacity of new ideas, not coming up with any new ways of producing, rapping. This is why a lot of South African rap right now is stuck in a rut and feels very complacent. It's probably one of the reasons why South African rap is easily becoming surpassed by piano. It is a reflection of changing times, but the changing times have a lot to do with the attitude of artists not having either the courage or sometimes the ability. Because there are artists who become so circular in their thinking that they're in a loop which doesn't allow them to break out of certain influences. And as a result, they forever stay in the same place, just kind of producing variations of this one thing. And I think, again, if we're looking at the 5 principles, the aspect of originality is an impulse where an artist constantly asks themselves, how can I still become something new? How can I grow out of my old habits that the audience has gotten used to? So as a result, every classic has had the quality of pushing forward in some way, sonically, stylistically, the tradition of how things are done. And therefore, it creates a new pattern of how things flow. And people settle into that until it's broken again, and then, thus goes the cycle of creativity. Even in the context of the industry. So, I think if we don't know well enough and aren't insightful enough about the things that we claim to love, we end up having conversations that don't really go anywhere. And that's my conclusion. it feels as if South Africa is filled with a lot of people who love what they do, but hardly have any information on what makes it move, tick, the history behind it. And it is understandable now why we don't have a lot of open, creative, novel, risk-taking artists, particularly in the commercial context. People are uninformed, uninspired, and pretty much complacent and can't go anywhere because they don't seek the information because they're too busy pretending that they already have it. So I think that if South African hip-hop is going to develop anywhere, we're going to have to first acknowledge the fact that we don't understand what hip-hop is because we think it is rap. And it is not. And we've spoken about this before. And before I ramble on, hit me up in the comment section because it's a bit of like a meta theory thing where I'm having a discussion about a discussion, so it tends to get a little bit, strenuous. But I'm very keen to hear your thoughts on this view. I myself do not hold any of the views that I have in some kind of absolute place, but as the Headspace, we do attempt to get to a place where we can have concepts that allow for the discussion to move forward by clear identification. What we do here is also something very akin to scholarship, very akin to teaching and receiving, because we wouldn't be here if we didn't have the confidence that we've done the work to study and to continuously keep learning about the culture of this country and everything that it's contributed, the culture of the continent at large, to continuously give you the views that will spark at least a thought of how anything can be understood today. That's why we do what we do. And we hope that you keep supporting us, that you keep watching, because we do it for the love. My name is VJ, the brother from the ancient mother. Get at me.